Hey everybody, it's Michael from Mr. Knife Reviews and Aurora Knife and Tool. Thanks so much for watching the video the other day. Got a lot of good feedback. Especially appreciated people who disagreed with me, taking the time to watch to the end and give me some feedback. I wanted to kind of give a little bit of a follow-up on that. I had kind of considered including this in the first video, but for some reason just didn't seem like the right time. But many of you might be aware of a guy named Super Steel Steve. He's been around in the community for quite some time, and I guess I've known of him for about probably 3 or 4 years, something like that, mostly through YouTube. Steve is different than me. I don't know if y'all have picked up on that. He thinks differently than I do. He communicates differently than I do. And honestly, there was a time when he was doing, just YouTube stuff. He would start his videos off in like really crass ways, kind of in order to kind of be his own bouncer. And then once he had done whatever crude thing he needed to do to get all the folks like me to not watch, then he would do his videos. And I watched a few of those, but then, I was like, I don't know, just there was other content. At that time, I was kind of YouTube knife reviewed out at the time. But I picked back up on some of his videos and, the whole slicey thing that came out and the Microtech thing with axial knives. And, so I've kind of reacquainted myself with Steve's material as of late. And the whole Medford thing happened at Blade Show. And I guess before that, I'd seen that Steve was coming to Blade Show, and I was like, we've like in very small ways like interacted. And I remember seeing just like a week ago, he said he was going to beat a guy up at Blade. So I was like, man, I don't know if I run into him, or should I say anything? So I was like, I don't know. Guess I'll see how it goes when the time comes. And it was like the absolute last moments of Blade for me. I was wheeling out my my only purchase for Blade. I'll have to show you that sometime. And Steve was off, a good ways away. And I just yelled at him. I was like, "Hey, Steve!" And I was actually surprised that he knew who I was. Which is really cool because I'm not always used to that. And had a good conversation with him. We talked about Chinese-made knives. And, obviously I was there working for QSP. And I'm using QSP as my OEM for my knife company. And so, I know off the bat that we've got some different perspectives on that. And honestly, him and PM2OG and a handful of others, have been talking about Chinese knives and kind of giving their perspective on USA made only stuff. And, I'm listening. I'm not in that camp, but I do think it's an important conversation to be had. And there are some important considerations to be made, which I do feel like I have made. And I may make a separate video about that. But, Steve and I had a good time talking just about knives, production knives, our own attempts, and feeble as they may be, to hand make knives and on, Harbor Freight type equipment. And toward the end, I kind of wanted to hear his perspective on the whole Medford thing. I knew that we would have a different perspective on it. And yeah, it was good. It was good to hear him. I mean, basically, he disagreed with everything that I had to say, and I disagreed with what he had to say, but I had to. I really wanted to listen more than say anything, just because I so rarely get the opportunity to actually interact, not just watch, but interact with someone who sees the world so incredibly differently than I do, and is still, able to communicate that in a way that I can wrap my head around. So, the content of the conversation is not quite as important, but there are a handful of things that he said that that just kept rolling around with me, just because they were things that I haven't thought of or hadn't thought that way about. And there were a couple things that I said that he had some rebuttals to, that I was like, I don't. It's one of those things where, like, I know I disagree with you, but I can't articulate it yet at this point. And so I wound up spending a good amount of the car ride back home between listening to Moby Dick and trying not to fall asleep, because Moby Dick is pretty boring. More on that later. But yeah, I spent a good amount of time just thinking about what he had to say and kind of processing that. And so you might find it interesting, kind of where this all is all leading, that the video that I posted, the previous video where I was kind of giving my thoughts on, I don't even know if that's fair to say it was my thoughts on the Medford thing. I really didn't do that. I kind of more talked about communication in general. But I thought that you might find it interesting that it was talking with Super Steel Steve that made me film the video that I just filmed. Probably I didn't remind you of Steve in my presentation. Yeah, so here's the thing. I know there are a lot of people. I may still do this. I may put a if I have put up a clickbaity title, that's only to try to get your attention. But I was thinking about the problem with Super Steel Steve, and you could go a lot of ways with that one. The problem with Steve. Here's the problem I'd like to address. The biggest problem that I have with Super Steel Steve that I want to talk about is anytime anybody talks about Steve, or really anybody that's kind of polarizing, they'll start off the conversation, they'll say, well, love him or hate him, and they'll say whatever they want to say, love them or hate them, they make good points, or love them or hate them, they're passionate about what they believe, or love them or hate them, they make their opinions known, or whatever. But there's always that caveat at the beginning, like love them or hate them. And I guess that bothers me because right at the outset, we have two camps, love them or hate them. And what they mean there is not literally love them or hate them. What they mean is agree with them or don't agree with them. And I just think that's a really foolish position to try to take with any person, right? Do this exercise. Pick a, sort of lengthy YouTube video from anyone, like the one person that you disagree with the most. I would hope that if you watched an hour's worth of a video of someone that you completely disagree with, that there would at least be one thing in there that you would agree with. That you go, okay, well, that's a good point, or that's true, or I can see what you're saying there. I guess my point there is, by saying agree with them or disagree with them, love them or hate them, it means that you have to decide between those two polarities. And I think that's not a good way to perceive it. I think that on the other side, so if you're somebody who generally disagrees with Steve, or people like Steve or whatever, if you generally disagree with what he has to say, I think you ought to be listening to him for the things that you do agree with. On the other hand, if you're the, man, 100% Steve's my dude, he tells it like it is, blah, 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 I think you ought to be listening to him for the things that you disagree with. I think you should be critically listening, like right now. I hope that if you hate my haircut, hate my beard, and hate the stuff behind me, that there's one thing you walk away with that you're like, but I do agree with that. And I hope if you're like my BFF, if you're out there and you're on Team Michael, I hope that you're like one thing that's like, I don't think I really agree with him on that one. Because it means you're critically listening, right? It means you're not just going to take whatever I say. There's this thing called, and if you're like a logic expert, and I get this wrong, my apologies, but I think I'm right on this one. The genetic fallacy. If you're familiar with fallacies, I love fallacies. Which sounds funny, but I do. It helps me think more clearly, I think, and it helps me process information. But the genetic fallacy, as I understand it, it basically says that you give weight or credence to an argument based on what you think of the person. So genetic in the sense of it's the genesis, who it's coming from. So if you like me and I give an opinion, then you like my opinion because you like me, that's a genetic fallacy. I think it's normally heard more in the inverse, but it works either way. If you dislike me and you think my opinion is stupid because you don't like me, that's the genetic fallacy. That's you're attributing weight or not weight to an argument based on your thoughts about the individual. And I think that's what you enter into whenever you have a, super still Steve, hate him or love him kind of attitude. So I would encourage you, to listen to him if you can make it through all the expletives and anything else he tends to throw your way. Here's the thing, and I'm going to say all this, and then I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I hope, if I remember to, if I don't talk myself out of it. I do believe that we need everyone's perspective. That everyone sees the world differently. And because of that, they see some things that you don't see. The person that you hate the most knows something that is true that you don't know. The person whose opinions you hate the most sees something about the world that you don't see and that you may never see unless you hear from them or someone like them. So I do think that it is important to listen to people who are different from you. I will say it can be exhausting to listen to people who are different from you, who see the world differently. I don't speak another language fluently, but I have spent some time in Germany where I speak a little bit of German. I've spent some time in Romania and I picked up a little bit of Romanian. And it can be very draining to try to do that translation all day long, and even just having conversation with people whose English is a second language. You're listening more carefully. There's turns of phrases you have to kind of flip on its head to catch. There's pronunciations that don't quite match up with what you're used to hearing. And so that you're listening harder, and it becomes a more like exhausting thing to do to listen to someone. And as a listener, I get that, right? So I understand not wanting to spend the majority of your time listening to somebody who believes different than you, speaks differently than you, has a different perspective than you. That can be very draining. But I do think it's important to develop that skill. Now, I will say this too as a speaker, because really this whole thing I'm talking about is communication. And as much as it is important to be a good a good listener, I think it's equally important to be a good speaker. Um, if you are trying to present your opinion to people, you can use the genetic fallacy in your favor, right? By being approachable, by being someone that seems to respect people on the other side of the aisle. I saw, we're all talking about Medford nowadays, so I guess I'll throw him under the bus. I saw the most recent take that he had on YouTube. It's maybe about a 40-minute video. And he talked about people who disagree with him. And he said that he genuinely felt sorry for them, people who were like offended by the shirt. Genuinely felt sorry for them. He felt like they were weak-minded. And I think not just the people that disagree with the shirts, but just in general, people that hold to the more like liberal type views, that they're weak-minded individuals. And in my mind, I guess, the easiest way to say it is the old standby, you get more flies with honey than with vinegar. But that's an example of the genetic fallacy, but using it in your favor. To respect the people that are on the other side. I'm a firm believer that on the whole, everyone's about as smart as everybody else. I know that's kind of a hard pill to swallow when you talk to somebody who has ideas that you think are just really flat dumb. But if you give them the time to talk about it, because they may have never spoken about it before. A lot of people have very, very firm beliefs, and they'll get very animated and very angry about them, like in a public setting or when they're ranting on YouTube. But I believe, and this is me coming on that love spectrum of the thing I was talking about the other day, love and justice. But I believe that if you could get most people to sit and analyze their beliefs, and not analyze them necessarily, but let them work out the vocabulary, because there's a level of like knowing, and then there's a level of being able to explain what you know. And just because someone can't explain what they know doesn't mean they're dumb or don't really believe it. So here's what I'm saying. If you can give somebody the time and space to articulate what they believe, I think you'll find that most people who have dumb ideas have them for really good reasons. And if we can start conversations with the assumption that we're dealing with someone who is at least of average intelligence, I think the conversation goes a lot better. The person on the other aisle feels respected and feels like you're not just blowing smoke when you say, I want to hear what you have to say about this. It just concerns me when we start conversations by insulting people who disagree with us. It's comforting to feel like only the smart people believe what I believe, right? I've mentioned before that I'm a Christian, and I've been around, when I was younger, when I wasn't around very many Christians, I remember feeling very defensive because I don't want to be looked at as an intellectual, dullard. But in general, Christians can be sort of stereotyped as that country bumpkin, just they'll believe anything kind of thing. And if that's not been your experience, I understand, because I've moved into different areas where that is a prevailing opinion and when it's not a prevailing opinion. But I say all that to say that I remember the first time that I really talked to people who were like professors and like scientists and, really top echelon intelligent people who were believers. It was very validating for me. That was until I met really intelligent people, top echelon intelligent people who were not believers, and you can't tell me that the smartest Christian and I guess what I'm trying to say is just that the intelligence of the person that you're talking to, if you can assume and give them the benefit of the doubt that you're talking to someone who is of intelligence, that they're going to be able to, the conversation is just going to go a lot better. And really intelligent people, is what I was saying before, really intelligent Christians, really intelligent Muslims, really intelligent atheists, all have, to them, very compelling reasons for believing what they believe. And so to just have the idea that only smart people believe what I believe, and the reason that someone else believes what they believe is because they're idiots, not only does that really shut down conversation, I think you as an individual, we as an individual, me as an individual, if I do that, I'm creating a really nice safety blanket for myself. It feels nice and cuddly to, cuddle up to that blanket at the end of the night to think that, I'm so intelligent. I believe all the right things because I'm intelligent, and everybody else who believes different than me is an idiot. I think it's a dangerous place to be. So if we could just find a way to have conversations and not let negative assumptions of intelligence or ability enter into it, I think we do a lot better. And like I said, that was really coming from that quote from Medford when he was talking about people, being weak-minded and fools. Again, I'm not saying that there's no such thing as truth. I do believe that there's one, that truth exists, that there is one actuality, reality, if you want to call it that, and that, that you can have beliefs that line up precisely with actuality. That's called being right. So I'm not saying, everyone's right, believe whatever you want to believe, That's not where I'm coming from. I do believe that there is only one truth. And what I mean by truth is one actuality, one belief system that corresponds 100% with actuality, with reality. So I'm not just saying you can believe whatever you want to believe, but I am saying that to have a conversation with someone, you have to have a starting place of mutual respect and expectation. So like I said, this is going on both sides. The last thing I want to say is about dangerous ideas. So someone can make an argument that, and many people are, I guess I'll say it this way. Many people are making the argument that, Greg Medford has dangerous ideas and no one should listen to him. I do believe that there is such a thing as dangerous ideas. But I also think that ignoring dangerous ideas is dangerous as well. I haven't quite worked out which one is more dangerous. For instance, and kind of going back to talking about, what we expose ourselves to, do I think that Christians should read the Bible more than they read Mein Kampf. Yeah, I actually do. I think anyone, considering between any two books, should read more of the Bible than Mein Kampf. But does that mean that I believe no one should ever read Mein Kampf? And here's the thing. Mein Kampf is a good example, right? Because Hitler's dead. So maybe I can talk about that without having to worry about offending and picking camps on individuals. Okay. No one should read Mein Kampf. But people do, right? So if I could push a button and Mein Kampf disappear from history, maybe I'd push that button. I don't know. I'll give it some thought. So, and maybe even then I'm a little nervous about using Mein Kampf because I've never read it. I know who wrote it. I know what it led to, that kind of thing. So what I'm saying is, if I could erase dangerous ideas, then sure, I might push that button and erase dangerous ideas. The problem is I can't do that. And other people are listening to dangerous ideas. And if people who are, I guess, less susceptible to those dangerous ideas are wholly unaware of them, I think that's more dangerous. So, yeah, if you want to say, we should stop listening to Greg Medford. He's a dangerous individual. He has, anti this, that, and the other beliefs, and there's no place for that in our community. I certainly understand that argument. And if you as an individual or as I as an individual could push that button and, suddenly Greg Medford is, ejected from the knife community and has no more platform, then yeah, sure, maybe that button would be pushed. The point, though, is that that button doesn't exist. And Medford and everybody else that you disagree with, whether it's, me, maybe I'm the one you want to push a button on. Maybe it's Steve. But there's nobody to push that button, right? And people are listening to these other ideas that you would disagree with. And I just think that there's value in you knowing the argument of the person that you disagree with, as well as they know it. A lot of times, and this goes back to that whole intelligence thing, a lot of times people know the dumbest version of their opponent's arguments. What value is that? If you can only defend yourself against the dumbest version of a concept, when you talk to somebody who is of equal or greater intelligence, you're going to get whooped. You know what I mean? You ought to know the highest caliber argument for whatever, especially if you've got a soapbox. If you've got a soapbox that is anti whatever, you should be listening to the key experts in that area and be forming opinions based on that. Only being able to repeat the dumbest version of your opponent's beliefs is just a really unwise position to be in. And that goes for everything. That goes for politics. If it goes for your faith, your philosophy, whatever. So I would encourage you to listen carefully, so that you're not, obviously that goes back to, that's another fallacy. That's a straw man fallacy, right? Where you take your opponent, you create the weakest possible version of your opponent, beat him up, and then say, well, look at that. What a dummy. I beat him up. Of course you did. You didn't actually beat up your opponent. You beat up a straw man version of your opponent. So I do think that, especially if you're going to be a part of a conversation, if you'd rather just watch knife YouTube reviews and not be involved in any of this junk, I understand and respect that as well. That's, if you know anything about me, that's where I normally am. I don't deal well with controversy, conflict. That's not my jam. Even in this, like, I'm uncomfortable because even though I don't, I'll watch back and see if I've said anything that I really disagree with. But, just even talking about something like this, unguarded, unrehearsed, makes me nervous because I don't dig that kind of thing. I take very seriously what I say on record. And I accept the fact that, and I kind of actually hope that 5 years from now, if I watch this video, that I'll say, oh, that was dumb. I shouldn't have said that. I totally disagree with that. You know why? Because that would mean that I've grown as a person. And then maybe like 20 years from now, I would watch it and be like, gosh, that guy didn't have a clue. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't that be good? Wouldn't that be preferable? Isn't that what you want? To be somebody who's constantly growing and constantly diving in deeper and thinking more critically. And yeah, I don't know, man. I just hear a lot of like mudslinging, name calling. And where does that get us? We don't know our opponent's arguments any better because we've cut them off by insulting them. And going back to the conversation with Steve, we don't know our own arguments any better. I was able to articulate some things in that previous video that I would not have been able to articulate had I not had a personal disagreement with Steve about it. He sharpened my arguments by me saying some things, him giving a rebuttal, and me not having a very good answer. And in the past, man, I probably would have bucked up and just kept going with an argument, because I've been, I think, pretty good in the past about blow and smoke argumentation, and winning arguments that I didn't actually win. Do you know what I'm saying? The person walks away feeling like, like they were defeated. But in my heart, I know I didn't really have any good points. I just kind of ran with it at the end. But yeah, so talking with Steve, I learned my own arguments better because I was talking with him. And if we had just passed each other in the hallway and said, I disagree with you, you disagree with me, you're an idiot, and so long, sucker, have a safe trip home. I know I would have missed out on an opportunity to better understand someone else, and as a result, better understand myself. So look, I get it. I don't encourage you to spend all of your time listening to contrarian views related to your own reviews, to views contrary to your own views. If you want to, if you're in like a mental space to be able to do that, then yeah, sure, maybe that would be good for you for a time. I will say I usually do it for a while and then retreat back to safety because it's exhausting. It really is. It really is exhausting. But every time I do it, every time I venture into those foreign waters, every time I'm watching, the news sources I don't normally watch, every time I go to watch those exclusively and not the news sources I normally watch, I find myself in, getting exhausted. But I'm thinking differently. I'm thinking critically, and every time I, retreat back to safety, which is usually, very little news, I've still learned something in the process. So, what's the path forward for us on this? I don't know. I think at the very least, though, it includes respect. I think treating people who disagree with you with respect is really like the only way to grow as a person. And even if you're only if your goal is to grow only as a debater, well, then it's still a good way to grow as a debater, is to genuinely give the person on the other side of the aisle a platform to disagree with you, and to have that back and forth. So, look, I appreciate your time. There's a lot of stuff that you can listen to that's not me, and so I appreciate taking the time. Hear me out. I encourage you, if you've listened to it all the way through and you've got, let's say you're on the 95% camp, 99% camp pro Michael, tell me the one thing that you disagreed with what I said. Help me clarify. Maybe I just said it in a way that I didn't mean to say it, or maybe I was just flat wrong and I can fix that. So if you're my friend and you disagree with something I said, tell me what it was that you disagreed with. If you're in the other camp and you think that I'm just like the dumbest person you've ever heard open their mouth, I've spoken now for almost 37 minutes, so don't tell me everything that I said that you thought was stupid, because that would take a while. Maybe just give me one or two good examples. And I'll try to give you some feedback and try to answer. And yeah, I don't know. I want us to be a better community. I want us to be a better country. I want us to be a better world. And these are some of the things I think that might lead to that. Genuinely hearing each other and communicating in a way that invites people to listen. So, appreciate it. Thanks so much.